After weeks of testimony, closing arguments are set to begin Tuesday in former President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial. Here to take us through the historic trial is NewsNation's Caitlyn Becker. And Caitlyn, you and I have talked about this off camera before. What can we actually expect when everything breaks down this week?
Well, we're going to get closing arguments. Summations is what we're going to get on Tuesday, and that's what we're going to spend the majority of our time doing. We're going to have an opportunity for both the prosecution and the defense to kind of wrap up everything we've seen in the last 6 weeks in a bow. And for prosecutors, that's quite a heavy burden. I mean, the burden of proof rests solely on them, so they have to prove their case. The defense doesn't really have to do anything but kind of sit back and say they didn't. So we've had 6 weeks. They submitted 236 pieces of evidence and called 20 witnesses. Among them, of course, former porn star Stormy Daniels, former fixer Michael Cohen. You had David Becker take the stand very early on, who is the former CEO of the National Enquirer. So we've got, sex work, porn star, tabloids, a felon. So it was kind of a wild ride for jurors. So they're going to need to be reminded of everything that sort of went along the way there.
And again, that's the responsibility of the prosecution to make that case and weave that story in a clear narrative to convince the 12 jurors, because just one could throw a monkey wrench into everything, right?
Exactly. And what is important for them is that they need to make sure the jurors keep their eye on the prize from the prosecution standpoint. And that is trying to convince them that these financial records were falsified and that they were falsified in the furtherance of the commission of a crime with the intent to either cover or commit a second crime, which would be campaign finance violations. So it's very sort of in the weeds. And what I think the defense is going to try to do is really hammer in their closing that you cannot trust Michael Cohen. He is a known liar, and that all of this was sort of salacious tabloid fodder.
And at one point, help me here, Caitlyn, but Michael Cohen actually admitted to stealing from the organization at one point?
That was one of the biggest moments of the trial, but it's not germane to the point here. So even though he did admit to a crime on the stand, it's going to be easy for the defense to try to distract the jury with that, and prosecutors, if they want to prove their point, need to make sure that they don't.
Caitlyn, one more question for you there. We know that Mr. Trump was under a gag order during this trial put on him by the judge, but he had a number of surrogates actually speak out on his behalf. How did that go?
It went different every single day. Don Jr. probably the most effective, and he only came one day of court. Eric was there several days, but we expect surrogates all throughout next week and while we're on verdict watch.
You're following this, but you do believe it'll all come down this week?
I think hopefully by Friday we should get an answer.
All right, Caitlyn Becker live in the studio. Caitlyn, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.